The rookies are in town. Rookie minicamp begins this Friday. Media is going to be allowed to be out there Saturday. Be on the lookout for next Monday's show. We're going to be breaking it all down, but we've got a fully packed show for you guys today. We get into the offense, and is it tight end friendly? Mike even references one of the Super Bowl tight ends. I'm excited for fans to see this.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show today. I am super excited to get out to practice this weekend too. We had real football kind of with the draft, but like on the field is the start of the actual season.
Thank goodness, right?
We're going to find out what this team's going to be eventually. We are presented by PJ's Coffee, and we are coming to you from the Better Call Botto podcast studio. Make sure you get out to PJ's. There's probably one 25 feet away from wherever you're at. They are everywhere. They got the best coffee in the city. They keep us going. They'll keep you going. Check them out. Great flavors. They got everything you need. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime and Jones Act, hurricane, and storm claims, you better call Botto at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is another one of our sponsors. They are an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin skin. Look for it in your favorite bars, stores, and restaurants. And of course, our sponsors, Ideal Market, best grocery store in the city. They are home of the freshest produce that you can find. They do great stuff in the community. They won an award for that, the Peter J. Larkin Award for outstanding community support. They always bring you the best quality food and products at the best prices. They are the home of the largest variety of Hispanic and international foods you will find in the state. The carne asada tacos, best you can get. I love them. They have a hot deli that surpasses many restaurants in their flavor of Hispanic dishes, and you can cash your checks, wire money, do whatever you got to do there. So go check them out. And last but not least, some of our favorite people in the whole world, Firehouse Subs, Veteran Boulevard location. Check them out. They got great food, and they are always doing different things to support the community. If there is a cause, there's a good chance that they are involved in it. All right, let's get into the show.
Guys are back on the field this week. I think everybody is excited to finally have something they can put video to audio, right? We're going to see guys back on the practice field. Just the rookies, though. Nick might add on to the sunburn we've got working from Jazz.
Somebody's been to Jazz Fest, yeah.
Maybe put sunscreen on Friday.
Look, I'm just trying to rep Hardhide. You know, they're red, I'm red. I'm just a great band ambassador. That's what we do for our sponsors around here.
We need
all
like
in.
the 50 SPF Friday.
No, I need like the 250 SPF, like SPF white. Like
right.
that's what's going to get it done.
Well, the good thing for rookie minicamp, it is very limited viewing windows. So realistically, what can we learn about these rookies?
Yeah, I don't think it's a whole lot as far as going out there, seeing who's competing, who's doing well. It's kind of, what do they look like? How do they move? Is this guy fluid in his movements? You get a little bit better read of the wide receivers and the cornerbacks because they're kind of isolated, and you can see how they catch passes when, you know, it's in those simulated things. My notes from last year, I got a couple that I felt good about and a couple I felt bad about. I'm gonna share them real quick. Alante Taylor moves well. Trevor Penning is huge. So that's the great insight we have. Chris Olave has special movement skills. The one guy I hyped, and I regret it, D. Anderson, I was all in off this first practice. He was big. He was fast. He caught well. And then it didn't work out for him.
Look, you said it. Receivers and cornerbacks. Sneak preview, we're going to do a Camp B segment. It's always a receiver or a DB. That's what you see on the field. I actually remember for years, Marcus Colston and Jimmy Graham are two of the greatest players in Saints history. Michael Thomas, three of the greatest players in Saints history. When you see them in these settings, you're just like, oh my gosh. The running backs always look better than they should because no one's actually tackling them. But yeah, we're not going to be able to. Their first two picks were offensive linemen. Their fourth round or defensive lineman. Their fourth round pick was an offensive lineman. It's going to be really hard to judge those guys. I think we'll get a good feel for their size and their fluidity, which I'm really interested with Brian Brzee, and seeing what he looks like out there. But if they're actually getting their job done, we're months away from that.
You mentioned some of the wide receivers that popped in minicamp last year. Is A.T. Perry the biggest question mark going into this year? And is he someone who has the most to prove after falling on the draft boards?
Well, he's going to be the one we're noticing because he's 6'3". He's big. The biggest knock on him is that physicality, inside traffic, getting off press coverage. Some of that stuff, he's not going to be really tested right away. We're going to see him win, contested catches where he high points the ball, which is his strength. We're going to see his size. We're going to see him getting down the field. We're probably going to see some oohs and ahs. He's probably going to be the guy who gets the most hyped over the next month. And when he has to prove it is when the pads come on in training camp and when the preseason games come. But I think he's going to be the one who, him and Kendra Miller will probably be the two generate the most buzz over the next month.
I disagree a little bit with some of the scouting reports that are out there on AT. I just finished my film review of him. I think that he does get off press pretty well. And the way that he runs, he's a glider. Like, he doesn't get slowed down by it. He can get off it. He gets open. He's actually most effective on hitches, out routes, and in routes. It's not a lot of go routes. He had 6 catches on go routes last year. When you kind of look at his numbers and how he's talked about, you think that he is just a downfield player, but he can kind of do all that stuff in those shorter areas of the field. I think the big issue for him is, though, the contested catches. He needs to get stronger at that, going over the middle, making them. When he's out in space, like, the way he tracks the ball is just, it's unbelievable. It's almost like watching like a center fielder kind of like follow a catch, and the way he can adjust to it it's something that I think they're really going to be able to take advantage of. He makes bad passes look good with the way he can adjust. So there are things he needs to do a lot better. I'm really, really, really excited to see him play after watching him. Like, there is stuff that he does that you shouldn't watch a 6-rounder and be like, how can this guy contribute to the team? And I'm watching it like he should contribute to the team with some of the things he can do. I don't think is a primary option, but is like a 4th, 5th guy. Like, I think he's going to do some stuff for this team this year.
And wide receiver is the most crowded room going into rookie minicamp. A.T. Perry said it himself that he believes he fell. We talked a little bit about it last week, the character issues. How much are the Saints going to be paying attention to how he just flows around some of the other guys and testing that character issue? Is that something that they will test in rookie minicamp?
They're the team that took him. Yeah. I don't think they had the character concerns. They didn't just take him. They traded up for him, right?
Yep.
They traded up for everybody they took on Saturday.
Except for one.
So if that's true, if that's what he heard as to what led his stock to fall, that's not the feedback we've gotten, and they put their money where their mouth is, that they're obviously not too concerned about that. So, I don't necessarily think this is the one team he doesn't have to prove that to, I guess. But look, I mean, obviously that's going to come into play. But, it's already out the window where they got him. He might as well be a 2nd-round pick at this point. I mean, the question now is, does he beat out, Traquan Smith and Brian Edwards for a role on this team? He's already invited himself into that right now.
And we'll see more of that in OTAs coming up May 23rd, May 25th, May 30th, June 1st, June 5th, and June 8th. And he's going to be tested, like you mentioned. Can he stand out among the other veteran wide receivers on the team?
Yeah, it's going to be a good competition there, actually. I mean, there's a handful of guys that he's going to be up against. And, like, I think Brian Edwards is one. Traquan Smith is someone that needs to fight to keep his job. The battle for the wide receiver spots, I think, is going to be really interesting this year. I think at the top, they're kind of locked in with their top 4 guys. But after that, I mean, it's going to be a really good battle. And on the character issues, Jeff Ireland actually talked to Jeff Duncan of NOLA.com and said it was about focus issues earlier in his career, maybe some dedication stuff that got sorted out as it went on. So I don't think it's something that they got to keep an eye on, make sure he's studying and all that stuff. But if he's not, he just won't make the team. Like, I don't think it's these character issues are something that's going to like infect the team. I think it was just maybe about like love of football type stuff.
Well, and the Saints did get some good news ahead of OTAs. We'll see some of the other guys return to the field. Cesar Ruiz and Trevor Penning are both out of their walking boot. Let's start with Cesar Ruiz. And both of them, I believe, were similar injuries. The Liz Frankfurt.
Yeah, it was almost the identical surgery.
Right. So and we've seen a lot of these Saints players deal with that exact same injury and that exact same surgery. For Cesar Ruiz, is he going to be somebody that can come back and play right away or training camp, or what's his timeline?
Well, Taysom Hill had a very similar surgery and a very similar timetable last year because he got hurt in the final game of the season. And he missed a lot of OTA minicamp time, but he was back on day 1 of training camp and really not even with major limitations. Then he suffered another injury. But going by that timetable, you would hope that both Cesar Ruiz and Trevor Penning are both going to be there for a full training camp. Now, Taysom Hill, I also remember an interview with Dan Rocher halfway through the season, why isn't Taysom Hill being used more as a tight end? And he's like, well, he was slowed a little early in the off. You really don't want that for either of these guys. You definitely don't want it for Cesar Ruiz because he just finally had that breakthrough. And it was like some of the talk with him was, well, he never got the full off season because of COVID and everything like that. It means so much for these guys to have a full off season, to hit the ground running. Hopefully they can both do that because, Cesar Ruiz is so important. It's important. He's going into a contract year now, but they don't want to have to replace two starting guards over the next 2 years. They want to just have maybe Nick Saldiveri replace one of them. They want Cesar Ruiz to be one of the top 5 or 10 reasons for optimism going with this team. And December of last year, I would have told you that's where he's trending. Now this throws a wrench into that.
Mm-hmm. So is it now or never for Cesar Ruiz? I hate to put it that way, but it does seem like now that the 5th-year option was not picked up, is it make it or break it?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it might even actually be smart to put off the contract as long as you can because you don't know how he is going to come back. And while it was trending the right direction, I could see it very easily spiraling again just as easily. We kind of had some of those false starts over the years with like Sheldon Rankins. It looked like he had figured everything out and then it kind of falls back down. Marcus Davenport did the same thing. So while I'm optimistic about the things he did and I thought he was heading the right direction, I'm not buying stock yet. I'm looking at the stock and I'm going to wait and see kind of which way it goes. So if they can put it off, more power to him. But yeah, I think it absolutely 100% make or break time for him and it could go either way.
Let's slide over to Trevor Penning. Is it crazy to ask this question? Could we see him start at left tackle this season?
He needs to.
It's the most important. It's not the most important. Michael Thomas is probably the most important. Derek Carr is probably the most important. But it's on a short list. Like Trevor Penning, I think everything right now almost feels like it'd be gravy, but they just used that very valuable first-round pick on him. And I think everybody is already starting to feel like, was it a bust? Was it a wasted pick? It could go either way. What if he has a Teron Armstead-like career? That's what he was drafted to do. The way they talked about his potential with his size and his power, they aren't just like, oh, this guy could fill in at left tackle like James Hurst has done admirably in recent years. They're like, this guy could be one of the cornerstones of our franchise for years to come. And I'm really excited about that potential, but I'm really terrified that a guy who, as Nick said, is gigantic, huge, and he's already had foot injuries to both of his feet in his rookie year. Are we looking at somebody that with that size and that frame is going to have lower body injuries, be the always, the what if of his career? Or is he going to be able to get past this and be, there is a scenario where at the end of this season, we're ranking him as one of the 3 or 4 most important players on the team going forward, if it all comes together. But again, there's nothing you hate worse than seeing somebody who was a raw developmental prospect from a smaller school missing a good chunk of the offseason.
I'd go as far as saying if he doesn't start at left tackle, massive disappointment. You made this major investment in this guy to be a cornerstone of your offensive line. And if he doesn't do that this year, I think it's a huge issue for them. And I don't think that he just needs to start. I think he needs to thrive. And I have major questions at this point. Like he practiced and then didn't practice. He came back. There was a little bit of a backslide on the field. It took time to get him up to speed. You're picking stuff up in the classroom, but if you aren't doing it on the field, there's only so much growth you can make. So he has to be that this year. And I think if he isn't, I think it's a major issue for the team. Like they're just not going to be what they should be with him there. And if you're taking a left tackle in that range, he needs to be like almost a Pro Bowl caliber player. Like that's what you're looking for. You aren't looking for James Hurst plus. You're looking for the guy that buries James Hurst so that you never even have to talk about him again.
Want to get into then, what is your ideal offensive line? Left to right.
Yeah.
A lot of fans have asked too, who's starting at guard then? If Trevor Penning is at left tackle, is James Hurst at guard? So if you can, I'll give you both each time to do it. Left to right, who's your starting offensive line?
Well, ideal left tackle, Trevor Penning. I guess left guard, Andrew Speed, although I could say ideal is Nick Saldiveri is so good that he comes in right away and he wins that job against Pete. Eric McCoy center, right guard Cesar Ruiz, right tackle Ryan Ramczyk. James Hurst, swingman, who could fill in for any one of them because there's no chance they're all starting 17 games. Nick Saldiveri, swingman at guard and center. And all of a sudden we don't even need to use Calvin Throckmorton, Landon Young. That's ideal. But for me, my ideal has changed on the offensive line in recent years. I'd be like, if you could give me 3 guys start at least 15 games and the other 2 start at least 12 games, I'd sign up for that right now, because this team has been, I honestly think, on top of the quarterback injuries, the Michael Thomas injuries, the real secret to why this team's missed playoffs 2 years in a row is because the way the offensive line has imploded because of injuries.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I got the same line going across the board. And if they have all those guys, that is a lot of athleticism on the line. Your screen game should be really good. Your run game should be a lot better. I think that they're limited with James Hurst starting at left tackle compared to Trevor Penning. I think it's that much of a difference maker. And I thought that was one of the big issues with the runs last year. So just to throw it back, though, is James Hurst at guard maybe a better option than Pete? Like, are you allowing that competition to play
Absolutely.
out? Or do you have it sharpied in already that Pete's the starter there?
No, I mean, Pete gets to line up there on the first day of practice, but James Hurst could easily beat him out. Nick Saldivari could beat him out. I mean, frankly, Andrus Pete has a lot to prove. Cesar Ruiz, who we just talked about, has a lot to prove. I'd love to see all 4 of them healthy and competing for that job. The thing I do like about James Hurst is if he starts all 17 games, because he's the, 4 of them are at, right guard, 1 at right tackle, 3 at left tackle, 3 at left guard during the season, and everyone else is making the other starts. I think he's a way above average 6th man.
Yeah, I'm not against James Hurst, and this podcast probably makes it sound like I'm majorly against him, but when you are drafting a guy that high in the first round, James Hurst he's solid. You don't want a solid out there when you have Trevor Penning, who should be a guy that's thriving and elevating you to new levels.
And you have to have depth on the offensive line. We've seen that continue to be a crutch for the Saints. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Nick. That is both the ideal starting offensive line presented by Ideal Market. Since we're still kind of talking about training camp and what's coming up, we actually talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the show, is guys that have popped but have not necessarily stuck around. So who have been your favorite Camp Beast all time?
Yeah, I got one right off the top, and I think he is the face of the Camp Beast list. Adam Bighill was maybe the greatest hype ever.
Oh,
People
man.
absolutely loved him. They were convinced. Really good CFL player, just didn't have the size to succeed in the NFL. But I think he is the face of it, along with one Darius Victor, the running back.
Oh, Vito.
Yeah, Vito.
Oh, there's so many good ones. There's so many
If
good
you
ones.
got a one nickname as a Camp Beast and people know who it is, I mean, you're in
I
there.
can't believe he didn't make the team.
I know.
The 2 that came to my mind, first of all, all credit to Marcus Colston, Lance Moore, Pierre Thomas, Chris Ivory. I'd put almost Willie Snead in that category, Junior Gillette. Those were guys who went from Cam Beast to like multi-year players on this team. So the dream can happen. But obviously we also have fun with the, do you remember this name categories? I think the one that's too good to believe was Delvin Breaux in 2015. Like, that one also started in OTAs. That wasn't a training camp. That wasn't a preseason game highlight. He was intercepting Drew Brees in OTAs like 2 weeks onto the team, and he was local, and everybody was hyping at him. I'm like, oh, this is a cute story. I wonder if he, makes the team. And he started all 16 games that year. So that's the dream that these can really. But the one I've never been more wrong in my life. Emmanuel Butler, the receiver. It was at the year the year he really broke out. I think it was 2019.
It was 19.
Yep.
I had a coach that I trusted, a person that I trusted at the end of OTAs. I was just kind of asking, like, you guys saw him for 4 weeks, privately, who really stood out? Emmanuel Butler. Then he shows up for training camp, and every day, highlight, high point catch. Drew Brees is talking about him. Sean Payne's talking about him. And then the preseason game started, and it just didn't happen, and his star fizzled just as bright as it. But I've never been more, like, I was like, stock, you used the word stock. I bought all the stock. I still have it. I won't get rid of it. He's going to be one of these. He could still come back. Like Emmanuel Butler's the all-timer. I know. But another one that was in between those 2 that I'll always remember. Probably one of the most impressive training camps we've ever seen from an undrafted rookie. Bobby Richardson, 2015, defensive tackle. That was the year 3 undrafted defensive linemen all made the team. We should have known how much trouble they were in that year.
Yeah, there was the guy from Syracuse. There were a handful of guys. Yeah, the other defensive lineman.
Caleb Ewells.
And
Tavares Barnes.
Yeah. Barnes is the one I was
They
thinking
had like 6 undrafted rookies make the team that year. Tim Lolito made that team.
Devontae Harris.
Oh, Devontae Harris and Ken Crawley, the duo.
Crawley was legit, though.
Yeah.
Look, the one thing I think people would be surprised to hear though is that like coaches and scouts, they are as fooled by these people as everybody else. And like what you're talking about with Emmanuel Butler, there's someone every year that I'm talking to, someone, oh, we found us one. We found us one. You see him out there, like, and they're hyping these guys up the same way we are. And then they just they fade a little bit. So there is like legitimate excitement behind these people every year in camp, and they don't work out. Three of my other favorites going to the receivers. RJ Harris was like,
I knew you were going to bring up RJ. I have him written down, but I knew
he was like, man, and then the second year he came back, and that's what's going to happen this week at the rookie OTAs. They're going to bring back somebody that didn't get a lot of snaps last year. They're going to let him practice. We're going to see them go out there, and it's because they know what they're doing. They're dominating everybody. You're like, wow, what did he do this offseason? I've seen too much now. I will not be fooled. By
the veterans come in and do that. Corey Fuller, Benny Fowler.
He's next on my list.
Yeah, like
Benny
if you're
Fowler.
a veteran who knows the playbook, you run circles around these guys early. But we said this about A.T. Perry, and I think it's going to be A.T. Perry again this year. It's very often the receivers. Those are the guys who can make highlights in non-padded practices against less experienced guys.
Jake Lampman was another one.
Jake Lampman. Andy Tanner every year. Shontavious Jones and Brandon Coleman. Remember that too? Oh, making Brandon Coleman happen. That was 6 years in the making. You know, we don't have to go back too far. Kirk Merritt last year. Everybody thought Kirk Merritt was going to be a star. Now, when we were talking about these battle for roster spots at receiver, Kirk Merritt's got his work really cut out for him to just make this team.
He might be the rookie can't beat.
Let's go back to Fowler. Remember, Drew Brees made this whole appointment in Denver to go work with Benny Fowler and Emmanuel Sanders. I feel like that got lost in the fold, and that was a huge camp story from a TV perspective. We were eating that up, and now where is Benny Fowler? I could not tell you off the top of my head, but the one that I circled every single day that would blow up plays, just somebody who flew after the ball, linebacker Andrew Dowell.
Yeah.
And he is somebody we talked about start to finish the last few years. And then the season starts, they step between the lines on Sunday, and it's, where the heck are you? What happened? And we talk about linebackers so frequently, too. The expectations for Zach Bond, why hasn't he met them? Why is he just a special teams guy? Andrew Dowell has fallen into that special teams role as well, where that's kind of where he lives and thrives during the season, or he's not even there and he's on the practice squad. Is this a year where Andrew Dowell can break out, or has he missed his window?
No, I mean, I think he has a decent chance here, especially when you look at what's at linebacker. They need help there, and he's been around for a while. He knows the defense. I agree with you. He's someone that I've been excited about every single camp, and I think that effort that he plays with is one of the things that makes him so great on special teams, because he just kind of has one gear, and he's a guy, you go out there, and it's almost like he's playing for his life on every single snap, and he just doesn't let anything go. So I think he has a good chance of being that guy, especially if Zach Bond doesn't step up. They need somebody else to materialize. Why not Andrew Dowell? I mean, I think he probably is someone that could go in, plug and play, and be a Craig Robertson level linebacker.
And credit to his character. Just a fun fact behind the scenes. When we were editing, what was coming up on WWL TV that night, we were in the back room just kind of piecing together things, piecing together sound bites. Andrew Dowell comes in to use the room, and we're like, oh, sorry. He's like, do you mind if I sit in the corner? You know what he was doing between practices? He was still in school. He was getting his degree. And the fact that he was able to be in that high level intensity, truly, unless you're at training camp, you don't know what these guys are going through as far as nutrition, weights on the field, and just the grueling on your body mentally and physically. And yet he's still out here going to get his degree. I just thought that was super commendable. Let's switch gears to tight end. Everybody's been wanting us to talk about this topic. Is this offense tight end friendly? It's a question we hear frequently as we get ready for the season, as Juwan Johnson is now tight end 1. They lose Adam Troutman. Taysom Hill really isn't the ideal tight end. Will we see the Saints in a 12 or 22 personnel this year?
This offense has been tight end friendly and can be tight end friendly. Obviously, it's Jimmy Graham at his peak, and Derek Carr likes to throw to tight ends with Darren Waller. Nick's gonna talk about what he's seen from the offense in general. But my biggest concern is, where are the tight ends?
Yeah,
that would be great, and what an opportunity it is for Juwan Johnson to do all of the feasting at the tight end position. But as we said, we haven't really seen them fully commit. I do wonder if the switch to a new tight end coach this year comes along with any philosophy shift in giving Taysom Hill more of an actual pass catching role on this team. I don't necessarily see the motivation there. Lucas Kroll is next. Speaking of undrafted rookies who kind of popped a little bit last year, faded, but exactly what you'd expect from an undrafted rookie. But all of a sudden, he's kind of penciled in as almost the number 2 tight end on the current roster. I asked around. I have not seen that they are aggressively pursuing veteran tight ends to come in and join the mix. I do think there's still some optimism that Foster Moreau can play this year and join the team. I don't know how soon they can expect that to happen. But if they want to be more tight end friendly, we need to see those tight ends emerge.
Yeah, so like the evolution of this team, like starting in 06 has always been traced through who the running backs are and who the tight ends are. It was quarterback steady, so the quarterback didn't really dictate it. I think the last 2 years, the quarterback kind of dictated the evolution of the offense to a certain degree. But I do think that having more running backs this year will lead to more 22 personnel looks. Last year, it was 2.9% of the snaps, which was really, really low. Only 4 of those were passes. I think we're going to see that change a little bit. Obviously, they're going to want to get Kendre Miller on the field with Alvin or Jamal on the field with one of those guys. So I think that number goes up a little bit. Last year, 12 personnel was actually really high, 27%. And I fell down a wormhole on this because I wanted to know what that number actually meant because it was such an outlier. It's always been a lot lower. 27% is a big number. Taysom Hill is a big part of that. There's not an easy way to go through that and isolate where Taysom's actually lined up. So I watched every single one of their snaps. There were 145 plays with Taysom, 146 without. So the plays with them, 56 of them at quarterback, we can throw those out. 5 of them in the backfield, we can throw those out. 55 in the slot, kind of 2 tight end because sometimes they're detached, but like sort of throw them out a little bit. 29 in line. So 200 plays of real two tight end personnel, which lowers the number to about 19%. So I think that kind of puts you where they've been throughout their history. It's kind of steady there. I do think that we will see some of those looks because they like to set up shots down the field. You bring guys in, you get one of those safeties coming down because you're running out of 22, you're running out of 12. Now you're playing single high. And that used to be the biggest giveaway when Brandon Cooks was on the team. They'd like to run 3 tight end stuff or 2 tight end stuff. And they'd run it and run it and run it. And then as soon as you saw that other safety come down, Brandon Cooks was going deep and they were making them pay for it. That aspect of the offense disappeared almost entirely in 17 because Drew could no longer throw the ball down the field. The routes that were going down the field, they started turning into giant routes, which were like just deep crossers. So that just kind of went away. Like you don't have someone to kind of take advantage of that look. So I think we're going to see that come back this year. And I think it's going to be because of the running backs. I think they're going to be a running back dependent offense, and I think that's going to play a big part in their identity.
How does Derek Carr being added to the fold impact some of these tight ends and the routes that they're going to be able to run that they haven't been able to run in the last few years because there's always been a question mark at quarterback? And like you mentioned, unfortunately, Drew Brees' arm kind of going out at the end of his career.
Yeah, I think it's going to allow him to be like a little bit more loose. Like I think you can get Juwan in more areas of the field too. I think that you can get creative with where you're lining him up, sort of like what they used to do with Jimmy Graham a little bit. I think you attack the seams a whole lot more. One of the things they used to do really well in Las Vegas and Oakland is just they killed the Saints with them. It's just on the bootlegs. Cool. And Derek Carr is somebody that can move a little bit more than I think people think. And I think you can get him rolling out. And I think that's just a really good play for Juwan Johnson to kind of, run to the outside and attack the edges a little bit. So, yeah, but look, you go through it and there's a steady theme here. Like you look at the personnel. Their 5 highest seasons of 22 personnel, 2013, 118 snaps, 2009, 122, 2010, 117 snaps, 2006, 106, 2008, 97. I mean, like these are seasons where they have multiple running backs and it just made sense for them to do that, especially very early on in the Sean identity before they kind of opened up a little bit and were attacking more down the field. And then the seasons with the most 12 personnel, 15, 22, 17, 14, and 10. So those were seasons where they had multiple tight ends. So like they're leaning on them. So I think we'll see some of that shift on 12 a little bit, maybe go back down. Taysom will probably keep the number up, but I think that the 22 personnel is something that's going to come back.
Talk about somebody who is going to be really important because he's going to have some of this space to himself. I have to think Foster Moreau is part of the plan. It's impossible to put a health outlook on that.
Right.
I mean, the next step is, you could bring back a Nick Van Nett, JP Holtz type. Those guys are available and they can be found out there. I wonder how involved Taysom Hill is going to be at tight end. But at this exact moment, I think it speaks volumes that they're going to Lucas Crow will get an opportunity expectations for him. I mean, he did. Yeah, he made the practice squad right at the beginning of the year. They did activate him for one game. He was around all year. Stock is the word of the day. I'd like to buy stock in him. If we were doing a projected 53-man roster right now, he's on my 53-man roster. But expectations, I mean, he doesn't have A.T. Perry's college stats. He doesn't have, stunning physical traits, but he's got opportunity, and and he's been in the building for a year.
Yeah, I thought Kroll was solid last year. I thought he was a better receiver in camp than blocker. I thought he blocked well in the third preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was a better pass blocker than run blocker, maybe. Miller Forrestal, I've looked at him a little bit. His blocking's okay. Joel Wilson, right? That's the other guy.
Yeah, that's the undrafted rookie they signed this year.
I thought he blocked okay too, but I think there's major questions to answer there, and they're going to be impossible to kind of hammer down early. Like that's going to be a July, August problem. Until then, we're watching routes on air and guys blocking shirts and shorts, and I don't know. Like I would feel much better if they went out and they got a known commodity. Just again, so you're setting the barrier, and it's if you're on the team, you're beating this guy out. Lucas Kroll needs to beat someone out. Like he didn't beat anyone out last year.
Yeah,
he shouldn't be awarded anything this year. So yeah, there has to be there's a door B here that we just haven't seen yet.
And our camp conversations will continue throughout the week. Be on the lookout for Wednesday. We will continue these conversations. Keep it locked on NewOrleans.Football. We'll see you guys next time.